All right, time is now 3:32. We're going to call to order the meeting of the Rules, Enactments, and Intergovernmental Relations Committee. I'd just like to ask everyone to silence their phones and electronic devices, and also keep in mind that the microphones here are very sensitive. I'd like to ask everyone now to join me for the pledge of flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Doreen, can we have roll call, please?
Emo.
Here.
Cheney.
Here.
Fagion.
Here.
Hines.
Here.
Paduk.
Here.
Sierra. Stiganga. Here. Paskevich.
Here. Okay, first up, we have Alan Sorensen, Commissioner of Planning Department. A, request to accept and appropriate additional funds as a subcontractor to Orange County Health Department for the Creating Healthy Schools and Communities program for the period 6/1/22 through 5/31/23. The grant funds will be used with municipal officials and selected communities to develop appropriate policies for their jurisdictions and work with those officials, community organizations, and members of the public to enact those policies. Funds will be received from the Orange County Health Department through the New York State Department of Health grant, $15,000, legislative request number 092. Could I get a motion in a second, please? Stiganga and Duke. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. We refer to it as CHISC funding, so the Creating Healthy Schools and Communities program. That the funding that we receive helps to offset the salaries of one of our senior planners. That money is allocated for specific communities in Orange County, which includes Port Jervis, Deer Park, Middletown, and Newburgh. And it is used for a variety of programs and projects. One of the projects which is actually in the process of being implemented is a program in the city of Newburgh where they're developing the program at one of the schools to help children learn how to ride bicycles safely. So they're actually creating like this within one of the parking areas, like a little track course that's being painted on the surface, and then the school's offering education so that the school children learn the safe rules of the road and learn how to ride bicycles, things like that. So it's a really good program, and we work closely with the health department on this, and again, it helps to offset the salaries of one of our senior planners.
Any questions, comments?
You say you're planning, one of your planners is running a health department program.
It's actually a program that's done jointly with health department and the planning department. So we work together. There are some projects that we collaborate on.
So the materials provided are their helmets, like is there helmet safety program?
Yeah. They have that. That's part of the program. School crossing guards, things like that.
And how do the schools get paid?
Well, there are communities that I've described that are the only communities in Orange that are eligible. So those are the communities that we work with. You're welcome.
Okay, other questions, comments? All right, call a question, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next up, B, request to accept and appropriate a grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and to authorize the county executive to enter into any and all agreements or contracts necessary to secure and implement this grant. This grant will provide funding for the county with the city of Newburgh to rebuild the Newburgh Landing Pier. Upon approval, a new capital project will be created, $4 million. Legislative request 097. Can I get a motion in a second, please?
So second.
Okay, I got Hines and, okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, on B and C, I'd like to request also to have the deputy county exec also weigh in on these. But I'll give a brief overview of the catalyst for these two projects. B is, both of these are congressional earmarks that came out of Congressman Maloney's office. So we submitted applications for both of these requesting funds through the earmark. Both were received. And the first project, B, which is the topic that we're on, for the new Newburgh Landing Pier, the idea behind the initial submission was to enhance, provide an opportunity to enhance the experience for riders utilizing the ferry service between Newburgh and Beacon. And the city of Newburgh has actually a separate pier that they're working on, in which they've already are in the process of going through the engineering. They're about 60% complete with their engineering. As I understand it, in speaking with the city engineer, that project has a anticipated cost of about $6 million. So if this funding can be utilized for that other pier, then there is a $2 million shortfall, which would have to be picked up by the city of Newburgh through a bond anticipation note or some other bonding. But with that, may I ask Harry to weigh in?
Okay, again, this is very well done. It was the last days of Maloney. They were throwing money at us and they asked us to come up with projects. If you've seen the pier in Newburgh, you probably have, you probably ride by it, but it's in deplorable shape. It's all yellow taped up. It's unusable. So we told Maloney we'd like to get some money to rebuild that. And lo and behold, it came through with $4 million. So what we're doing now is we talked to Corporation Council, or excuse me, not Corporation Council. No, County Attorney, thank you. And he says that we, or suggests that we put an MOU together between the county and the city and determine who's going to do what and combine the monies that they receive for their planning with our monies for construction. There's always a little twist in everything. The twist here is how do we connect this to the ferry service that goes from Beacon to Newburgh? We'll do that. We'll find a way. We'll do that. So it's been a long time coming. I don't know if you've seen the pier. It's just horrible, unusable, unsafe. And for a city like Newburgh, to not have a landing is sort of pretty bad. So we think we can work something out here. And we've been in contact with the city. I've been with the city manager. We've talked to the engineers.
Yeah.
We think that it's very doable. And the city has committed to filling the gap between the 4 million, the money they got for the design, whatever the final number will be.
Questions, comments? Let's sit down.
So we're not doing anything on the ferry portion?
We are going to come up with a creative way of linking the requirement of a ferry connection to the landing on Newburgh.
Fixing anything at the ferry dock?
I don't think we need to really. I think the ferry dock is fine. You go down there right now, just they throw a ramp on it from the parking lot and you're on it. But we will find linkage as required by the grant.
So the dock we're talking about is where the steamboat parks, is that area?
No, it's where there's like a little lighthouse there. It's bathrooms.
Right.
And Unico Park. It's Unico Park. That's
Right.
where it is. That landing right there.
But it does, that's where the ferry comes in and picks up its passengers,
No,
doesn't it?
no, they pick up farther south, below Front Street.
Talking about the one that picks up the passengers next to Torches.
Well, those are private boats.
Right.
No, with this is talking about the boat that's funded by the MTA.
Yeah, I know that. I'm not talking about the boat, I'm talking about the dock.
The dock, it doesn't set the dock.
Where the ferry, not the ferry, but the steamboat, I forget what it's called.
River Rose.
River Rose.
I've
Private
seen that
boats
pick
in-
up people in the area where the caution tape is now,
Years ago.
just south of Torches.
Right, years ago they did.
Teens, I should call it.
We had many different groups that would use it. We did the Half Moon would come in, we had other boats there, but you can't go on it. It's all roped off. The River Rose has its own dock just north of the landing we're talking about. It was a city deal with River Rose, but he actually built it in Zella.
So no county money whatsoever, other than maybe Alan's staff and time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So what is this landing used for? No boats come into it, no nothing?
It's derelict. You can't go on it. You can't walk on it.
It's 4 million, how big is it? I don't know exactly which one.
I have plans in my office you want to go by one of these days, but but it's a substantial, the channel in the Hudson River runs on the west side of the Hudson. That's where it's always been historically. That's why larger boats can use that side of the river, but they can't go over by Beacon. That has been a dock for 200 years. The present landing was probably built in the 1970s. That's the one that's derelict. That will be replaced.
The proposed, they're about 60% done with the engineering, the city, so they do have some very far advanced plans. I believe it includes not only I'm going to refer to it as the pier, but also I think there are some boat slips that are proposed as part of it.
Yes, and that might have to be looked at again in lieu of this new funding.
Yeah.
Well, there is a 60% design.
Mike, did you have one? No, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So just to follow up on Michael's question, so what would be the use of this pier after it's completed? So we already have one for the docking of the ferry, and we have the other one for the Rose boat.
It would be a public use controlled by the city government.
Yeah, so I don't know the full program of it, but I guess private boats could dock there. At least from what I saw from the drawing, there were some boat slips also included, so I'm not sure how that would be worked out, but it would be public access.
Back in the last century, when I was city manager there, we had the same thing, and we actually had control of the dock at the city manager's office. So if a cruise line wanted to come in or a river cruise type of thing, they would call ahead of time and get permission. And we had contracts with part of the Hudson. I don't know if River Rose was one of them, but it might have been. But there were other boat companies that would make arrangements with the state to be able to use that dock. We had, like I said, they had one used to come there and visit for a few days.
That could be something that could fall under our tourism coming up from the city.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are actually cruise companies that want to set the new river. They can't right now because there's no landing.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at. I was hoping that it would have a use for that rather than just private boat slips.
I think it will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, call the question, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next up, we have C, request to accept and appropriate a grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and to authorize the county executive to enter into any and all agreements or contracts necessary to secure and implement this grant. This grant will provide funding for the county to complete the Orange and Dutchess Transportation Access and Mobility Study project, $500,000, legislative request number 098. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Cheney and Spadanga. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is another Congressman Maloney earmark. It would provide funding to undertake a study to enhance the connection between Stewart Airport and the Beacon train station, including assessing the feasibility of establishing an enhanced rail connection or bus rapid transit. There currently is a bus shuttle between the two. But the proposed plan at this point would be for the Orange County Transportation Council and the Dutchess County Transportation Council Orange County Transportation Council would be the lead on the study, but we would include the Dutchess County Transportation Council as a partner in this study. And it's $500,000, which is a pretty healthy budget, I think, for a study of this nature. And Harry, is there anything else you would want to add to that?
I would just say this is another old chestnut that's been around for decades. Matter of fact, the idea was first presented by Maurice Hinchy, he was congressman. And the idea is to connect Stewart Airport with Beacon train station. And we were asked to submit some programs. We drew this in there. We thought about it later on, so maybe we should not be involved with it. And it was sort of far-fetched in some ways, some views. But Dutchess County came back to us and said, no, we would like you to do this study because they have such traffic problems right now on the east side of the Newburgh Beacon Bridge. I mean, any time of day and night, it's just jammed up. We thought this might be a good reliever for them. So we were just to recommit. We did. Maloney got us the money. So now we're ready to look at a study that would possibly have light rail running from down 17K through Broadway and over to the Newburgh Beacon Bridge and over to Beacon Station. Again, the benefit of this would have a collateral benefit of this would help economic development in that area tremendously, if it should happen.
Okay, questions, comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next D, request for approval to repurpose funds. Capital project number 431S was set up for the Warwick Transit Facility, which has now been completed. The funds are 100% New York State Accelerated Transit Capital Funds. The New York State Department of Transportation has approved the request to repurpose the remaining funds to be used for the purchase of transit vehicles. Upon approval, capital project number 431S will be closed and a new capital project will be created in its place. $179,633. Legislative request number 102. Make a motion in a second. So moved.
Okay.
Cheney and Spadanga. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so these are funds that were in excess for a project that has been closed out. So rather than allow the funds to lapse, we came up with a new project, which is to purchase some additional transit vehicles and to allocate those excess funds for that purpose. And that'll keep those funds from, we refer to it as lapsing, which in effect means if we don't use the money, we lose it. It's
So over any questions, comments? Legislator Cheney and
Is there an expectation as to where those buses will?
I think it's open, right now it's open. But clearly if there's, we work very closely with Warwick and the other Valibus communities, that need those funds, and where there's a need, we'll look to fill that gap.
So it would be the dial buses or something?
I suspect,
That program as opposed to the bigger buses?
I think so. And now with inflation and everything, the commuter coaches are just off the charts in terms of the costs. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Minority Report.
Yeah. So we should be replacing some smaller buses, or the reason I'm asking is VFW is of course talked to you about possibility of helping. They have so much money, but they're looking for help to buy a small bus like that. I was told there wasn't any available. Would this make something available?
This funding will be used to replace buses that are nearing the end of their useful life. Those buses that have reached the end of their useful life for transportation purposes typically will be auctioned. I guess in that respect, they're available. We're not free just to give them to another entity. We have to go through that process under the federal guidelines.
Okay. But when they become available, what's the time?
I would say within, we are replacing buses kind of on a regular basis. So periodically, those buses get retired and then are sold, and any proceeds that come from the sales goes back into our transportation program. So I would say, within the next year, it's likely that a number of buses will be replaced, and then the older buses will be retired.
All right, so where are the buses stored? We got to talk to you about.
I can go back. I'll check with my staff in terms of when the next replacement schedule is for buses, and we could I can give you an idea of when those buses are going to be retired and from what communities.
And when they might go to auction. Because
Yeah.
they have someone there, I would think that we could work with veterans somehow to help them some way,
The sale goes through general services.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can actually go on that website and they handle not just Orange County, they handle all counties. So even if you're, I wouldn't wait, if they have a need now, they can actually look at Westchester and Rockland and all the way upstate where they have stuff that's available.
What city?
It's AAR auctions.
Okay, any other questions? comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
There's our agenda. Look for a motion to adjourn. Being submitted. Okay, Smokey.
Hey, Michael.